Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Bingefest. I am your lovely co-host, Kate Conroy, and with me is the lovely and talented co-host, Vinnie Civitillo.
You're talented too.
Oh, thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So this is a podcast about the TV shows that we're watching and how much we think you should either watch them or hate watch them with us. And we release a new episode, what did we say, every other week
Yeah.
ish? Be sure to check us out, give us a 5-star review. Because we desperately need the attention. Just kidding.
I cling for it in the middle of the night. Keeps me up.
Today we are going to talk about Preacher seasons 1 and 2. But before we get to that, what are we currently binging? Vin, what are you binging?
Well, the answer to that is honestly this. And then before that, it was what we're going to be talking about in the next show. But
Yeah.
just for the sake of having something to talk about in this segment, I'll reach back. Maybe like a month ago, I was watching Cobra Kai because Cobra Kai dropped the first part of their final season. I guess back in June, or no,
Yeah.
it was later than that. I think maybe July. I can't remember, to be honest with you, but it was recent enough that I
Gross.
can't remember anything else that I watched after that. At least not that we've already talked about on the show. So,
Yeah. That's good.
um,
That's cool.
I mean, like Cobra Kai. I don't think we've talked about Cobra Kai on this show. We talked about it on other people's business a lot.
We should. We
Yeah.
should.
So I won't get super into it because maybe we can have an episode on Cobra Kai at some point. But like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
it's more of the same at this point. Like if you've been enjoying the show for the last couple seasons, I think Kate dropped off of Cobra Kai, and that's fine. But if
Yeah,
you've
it
been
got
enjoying it,
stupid.
it's more of the same. If you're not enjoying it, then it's more of the same. So like, you know what you're getting yourself into every time they come out with more of these episodes.
Yeah,
I
I mean, I wish that they had. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I think it's really lame that they're cutting the final season up into like I think two or three parts. Now I think it is
Yes.
three parts, not even just two.
Oh my
Because I
God.
feel like they have Netflix has these few shows. Let's call it Cobra Kai and Stranger Things, and we are just dragging out, like keeping them on the air as long as possible because you have a lot of people that are not going to cancel until the day that the final season of Stranger Things drops.
Yeah, but I also think that it's like a budgeting move or a oh God, I can't think of the phrase I'm looking for. But one of the reasons that AMC split their final seasons into two was because so many of the cast members were contracted for X number of seasons, and they would have had to renegotiate and pay more if they had done an official season 7. They did that with Breaking Bad. They did that with Mad Men. I think they did that with Better Call Saul. And I
I mean,
just
you
feel
are
like
you
it's a
are
way
naming
for
some shows that ought to have like, and I know there's no such thing as an unlimited budget, but you are naming some shows that really ought to have had unlimited budgets. Like whatever they need, just shower it on them.
yes,
Yeah,
yes, because I mean, candidly, I would have watched Mad Men if it had continued through the 70s into
yeah,
the 80s. Like I
yeah,
could have watched that show forever.
yeah.
Breaking Bad certainly had like a very natural end point for obvious reasons. Same with Better Call Saul. But those were some of the best shows on television when they were on television. And yeah, like throw that cast all the money. They deserved it. They were acting the shit
Yeah.
out of those scripts. It was unreal.
And not just
And
like as a reward, but I mean, let's be honest, AMC likes to think that they have as much content as like a Netflix or a Paramount because
right,
they have like an AMC Plus kind of a thing
I
where you
know.
get
And
all the
I'm
content,
like,
including this show right here that we're going to talk about today. So
yep.
it's in their best interest to have certain shows like Breaking Bad, Mad Men, Better Call Saul that are just like evergreen. People can watch it, like The Walking
Yes.
Dead is another one where it's just like
Yes.
you
Yep.
need to have tentpole shows that make it worth people subscribing to your thing. And if
Yeah.
everybody gets sour on Breaking Bad because the last season they kind of cheaped out on it, like, oh, we couldn't get Jesse back because we refused to pay him like an extra $500,000 or whatever it is, then that kind of ruins the
Seriously.
content, of your network. So,
That's exactly right. And not to be anti-CEO, but when I look at the salaries
Oh,
of some
sure.
of the
Yeah.
CEOs as compared to some of the talent keeping those CEOs in business, I really question the judgment. Like you're
Yeah.
absolutely right. See, the last season wouldn't have Jesse because we wouldn't pay him an extra 500. Like, please, just
Yeah.
please. Anyway, I'm
So
off my
yeah,
soapbox.
anyway, Cobra Kai, I would say like it's a show that's got, I mean, it started a little goofy. It's gotten a little goofier, over time. Like right now, the big season story arcs are revolving around this karate tournament in, I think it's Okinawa, somewhere out east. And it's supposed to be like one of those tournaments where people can die, like it's a very serious thing. And so I'm like, why does it make sense for these characters to go out there and do it? Like first of all, it's one of those things that's like Mortal Kombat, like we're bringing in the best dojos across the world. And you're going to tell me that like yours is one of them, and not just yours, but your competing dojo down the street. Like, like both of you made
Right,
it. And like, not only
right.
that, but like if I was a dad, because I am a dad, Daniel LaRusso is a dad in this show, and two of his students happen to be his two kids. Why would I want them competing in this? Like it's just, yeah. So anyway, it's a
No.
little goofy. You have to willingly suspend your disbelief as hard as one can willingly suspend their disbelief. But if you've been watching the show, you've been gradually doing that over the course of it. This is nothing new. I would recommend it if you're into it. If you're not, then skip it, whatever. Kate, what have you been pitching?
Okay, before I do that, I just have to
Yeah,
sidebar very quickly because
sure.
every single time I hear the name Daniel LaRusso, I think about the woman who played his mother, who also ended up on Mad Men as one of Don Draper's secretaries, Ms. Blankenship,
Was she?
who, yes, that's the same
His mother was
actress.
adorable. I loved her.
She was, but
I
she
honestly can't
aged,
remember her
and
name.
then
Yeah.
I can't either, but she played Ms. Blankenship. And she was one of the funniest characters on Mad Men ever. Like, if you, I'll send you a reel later
Sure.
of all of her best moments because just hilarious,
Oh
just
yeah.
such a funny woman. Okay, so anyway, I have been binging, I'm still binging Doctor Who, and I got to the Peter Capaldi years, which is seasons like 9 and 10, on HBO Max. And I love Peter Capaldi. Like the work that he has done in Armand Iannuccio shows is just some of the best British comedy I have ever seen. And granted, a lot of it is the scripts because the writing, Armando Iannuccio is so biting. He is the one, Armando Iannuccio is also the one who did Veep,
Mhm.
which was the spiritual successor of some of those British. I think the one is called Thick of It. So Peter Capaldi plays Malcolm, the Prime Minister's chief of staff, and he's a whip. Do you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
when shit needs to get done,
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
absolutely makes it get done with the
Which,
worst
by the way,
kind
is
of
like the best title
insulting.
ever. Like when in my actual job, I have to write out lower thirds for I'm a television producer, whatever you want to call it, and like when I write out the lower thirds, Republican whip, Democratic whip, like I'm always sitting there like writing that, thinking like, wow, that is the best title ever. I wish I had that.
Seriously, it really is. Anyway, he is one of the most fascinating people to watch on television that I've ever watched. I love him. And that means that it is so difficult to watch seasons 9 and 10 because the writing of those seasons is just not where it was during the David Tennant years or during the Christopher Eccleston or the Matt Smith years. So much so that I have started and stopped and just gone to the next episode at least 5 times over the course of those 2 seasons because I just don't care. Like they have set up false jeopardy. People are dying that I know are not going to die. Like it's just stupid, lazy storytelling. And that is one of my biggest pet peeves is lazy writing. I will tell you that. So I'm still going with Doctor Who, and I just started two new ones, both on Hulu. One is called How to Die Alone, and it's about this woman who works at JFK in like she drives one of those carts around the airport, transporting people to and from their gates. And she's
Sure.
single. She broke up with her boyfriend, who's now getting married, and she still loves him. She lives alone, but her apartment is terrible. And she gets into an accident on the first episode and she ends up in the hospital alone. and she like has this moment where she has to like reevaluate her life. And that's sort of how it starts. It's a comedy, but like there's still some real things happening too.
Sure.
And the one I just started last night, which I plan to binge this weekend, is called High Potential, and it's the new Caitlin Olsen show. Caitlin Olsen, of course, is from Always Sunny in Philadelphia,
Always. Or
and
I was gonna say, of course.
her,
Sorry.
of course, right, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see her in a different role. The previous show that she had, the Mick, I watched maybe 3 or 4 episodes. I didn't love it. And this she plays a really serious person who has a very, very high IQ, but she's a single mom. She's got 3 kids. She dresses a little bit like Julia Roberts in that water movie.
That water movie.
What's the Aaron Brockovich? Aaron Brockovich.
Sure. Okay. Water. I was like, what?
Right.
Great film.
Yeah.
Great film. Yeah.
Really great film. Yeah. So she's it's very much that Aaron Brockovich vibe. She dresses a little bit on the wild side, but she's smart as hell and she is finding mistakes that police are making all over the place. And so far it's entertaining. I'm looking forward to watching more of it. So that's a very long answer to what I'm currently binging.
I've
I
been
hope it was
meaning to
worth
get
it.
not to say that it's one of the ones you watched, but I've been meaning to get back into Sunny in Philadelphia for a long time now.
Yeah.
Like I think I saw up to maybe like season 4-ish, and I've caught like random episodes here and there, but it's never been something that I've just sat down and watched. Maybe just because of
No.
how much of it there is, and maybe just
Yeah.
because of so when I get shows on like, let's say like a Vudu or an iTunes, that's one of those shows that never comes up, like in a sale or anything, because you can't
Yeah.
buy most of the seasons because I want to say like half the seasons have at least one episode that have gotten banned from television.
Okay.
Either over like blackface, I know was one of them. I don't know what they did in the rest of them, but half of them, because of that, once that happens, you can't buy the season as a whole anymore. And
Right.
so, like, they don't put it on sale, which means I'm not, like seeing it during the weekly things going, oh, yeah, I'll get that. So it kind of
So
becomes like out of sight, out of mind. Yeah.
most of the episodes are available on Hulu. So I will
Yeah.
watch like 1 or 2 a night before bed. It's my before bed show. So
Okay.
I watch the serious long deep ones first and then I get lighter and lighter as the night goes on so that when I go to bed I'm like in a great mood and it's easy. But I just got to the seasons that were filmed in 2001. So post pandemic,
2021, you
post
mean?
thank you. That's what I
Yeah.
meant. Yes, 2021. So post pandemic and post January 6th. And one of the most recent episodes was a government um, auditor coming to investigate how the gang used the 3 PPO loans,
PPP, yeah.
PPP loans. Sorry, I don't even. The acronyms were hard in the moment. Now
Yeah.
that they're in the distant past, I cannot
Sure.
be trusted. The PPP loans, and there were just some really funny lines about what they did with that money and how their hobbies and their money making schemes impacted the election and January 6th and they kept talking about my guy, my guy. They were like, yeah, man, that really messed up my guy, my guy. And the auditor at the end was like, so I just, I forget, but they mentioned Trump's name. And they were like, no, 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 we're talking about Kanye. Kanye West, our guy. Have you heard him? He's amazing.
Hmm.
And then the credits was a Kanye song. It was very funny. I'm totally spoiling it. But all of that to say, the gang is still funny. All those years later, it's worth it if you only watch one episode a night just as a palate cleanser before bed.
Okay. We'll make sure to make that a show because that's the beauty of this show is that it allows me to prioritize something that I might not normally prioritize. And
Right. Exactly.
but speaking of which, on to
Yeah, speaking
Preacher,
of
right?
which,
Yeah.
Preacher season 1 and season 2. So, yeah, we were texting last night or the night before about like how slow season 1
Yeah.
felt versus how quickly we both got through season 2.
Yeah.
But before we get into that, do you want to like you're the resident comic book person. And I will
Sure.
say it's one of the few comics that I read from start to finish.
Really? Then
I
you
read
would
it as
probably
a
be better at
graphic
this than me. In
novel.
fact, I will let you do that. I started the Preacher comic book, I want to say like last week, and I got through about half of volume one. So I know just enough to be dangerous here. Like I
Okay.
know enough to know that the show and the comic share certain brushstrokes, but are otherwise
Yes.
drastically different.
Yes.
So by all means, tell us about
Okay.
the Preacher comic book.
All right. So the gist of the story, how we get to where we end up is that in not in heaven. In heaven there's an angel and in hell there's a demon. And they have an affair. And we don't know their backstories. We don't even really know their names. We know that there was a child that was produced as a result of that affair, and the name of that child is Genesis. And that being is sort of all powerful. He's sort of chaotic. He's got good things and bad things. And he suddenly escapes from his handlers because, of course, this is a scandal in heaven. Nobody wants to admit that an angel had an affair with a demon. Nobody in hell wants to admit that a demon had an affair with an angel.
Yeah.
So, two people are tasked with containing Genesis, and Genesis escapes and hits heads like a comet through the air, through the sky to Earth and attempts to find a home in a human being. Finds a preacher in Africa. The man is in the middle of giving a sermon. Genesis enters his body. There's a few minutes where he's sort of experiencing it, and then he like just explodes. Like his body cannot handle it. Genesis takes off again, ends up in Russia in the body of another holy man, and all we see are the police vans outside of this church with blood everywhere. Like it's not good. So Genesis takes off again trying to find a vessel, ends up in Texas, and that's where we meet Jesse Custer, who is a down on his luck preacher, grew up in Texas, kind of a bad history, trying to reinvent himself. He's in his father's church, and Genesis enters Jesse, and Jesse is somehow able to contain this being. And that's kind of where we start. Jesse is in this kind of shithole town called Anvil, Texas. Anvil in like the 1800s used to be called Ratwater, Texas. So you can imagine why they changed it. The branding was just definitely better, Anvil.
Hmm.
So that's Jesse. We also meet Cassidy, who's a vampire. He's been alive for hundreds of years, and he's being hunted by vampire killers. And he lands in a it's a very long story. He's flying across the country. There's a fight that breaks out on the plane. He basically is able to kill everybody there trying to attack him. He jumps out of the plane knowing that he's immortal. So he lands in a crater in Texas, lures a cow over, you know,
This
eats the
happened in the
cow.
comic too. I remember in the show. I didn't remember this happening in the book.
I'm pretty sure it happens in the comic,
Okay, maybe. Hmm.
but I read the comic 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So I might just be making this up.
Maybe.
Anyway, Cassidy is Irish. He's kind-hearted, he's good-hearted, he's hilarious, he's, comic relief. He lures a cow over and completely devours the cow and then uses the cow skin to shield him from the sun so that he doesn't burn up. And then we meet Tulip, who is Jesse's ex-girlfriend, who wants to lure Jesse away from this path of righteousness that he is now on and go back to working with the Rodriguez brothers or whoever it was, robbing banks and scamming people and just having fun, making money not very ethically.
Hmm. I got the impression in the comic book that Jesse left her like 5 years ago or whatever, and she like kind of came back into his life just looking to find out why, or like, like, hey, I just found you, and I don't know if she wanted closure or whatever. Like I said, I haven't finished the first volume yet, but very different from what we get in the show, at least in terms
Yeah.
of characterization. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah. All
Um,
right, you want to talk about the show?
well, I was gonna say shout out to was it Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon who wrote the
Yeah.
story. I say this because we I at least don't have anything to say about them, but I was gonna say that that's a good thing. Like if you watched our Watchmen episode, like we railed on Alan Moore a little bit. Like
Yeah, we
let's just
did.
say if we don't spend like 10 minutes talking about Garth Ennis, it's a good thing. So
Yeah. I
yeah,
have nothing but good to say. I mean, the story was really, really good. It
yeah.
was inventive. It was outside the box. It was well done. It was well written, well acted. Like, I have
Yeah,
nothing but good
and I
things to
would
say
say
about them.
that when that came out, we were talking about from a comic book perspective, a period where comic books were really growing up. And I mean, there had always been stories that were intended to be read by adults, but really that era was where, they really started breaking out with really good stuff that they were acknowledging. Like, I know, like, you say like kids never really read, but they were acknowledging like kids don't really read anymore. Let's just make something, that adults can really get into. And you saw this boom of original stories coming out, and I think this was a
Yeah,
Vertigo comic.
it
So
was.
Vertigo was awesome with that, and great
Yeah.
stuff, came out in that whole
Always
area.
very subversive, Vertigo. Did you ever read Transmetropolitan, the Spider Jerusalem comic book?
Oh, no.
Holy shit, that is fucking amazing.
Hmm,
Like, put it on your list.
sure.
Damn, what was the name? He was modeled, Spider Jerusalem was modeled on Hunter S. Thompson, sort of this
Okay.
gonzo
Yeah,
journalist. And it's set in the future, but we there was all the same problems. It was freaking great. Spider
sure.
Jerusalem. I used to want to get a Spider Jerusalem tattoo because it's just so good.
Very
Anyway,
esoteric.
very, very esoteric.
Sure.
Very. Anyway, back to Preacher.
Back to Preacher.
All right. So I feel like we've got a good handle on like how we got there. People who are listening probably have seen the show, right?
Yeah, and again, I feel like we shouldn't have to say this every episode, but at least for the time being, I'm going to continue it. If you haven't watched Preacher seasons 1 and 2 yet, and you
Yeah.
would be concerned about like spoilers or anything, go watch that first, then come back here.
Yeah.
It'll be a much better discussion to be had by us all at that point.
Agree.
Yeah. Now
Yeah,
go ahead. Feel
agree.
free to spoil it from now.
All right. So the townsfolk in Preacher season 1 are kind of boring.
Yeah,
Including the Mr. Kincannon, the guy who owns the beef farm or the beef, it's not a farm. It's a slaughterhouse. The guy who owns the slaughterhouse.
Rorschach.
You know,
Jackie Hurl.
Rorschach,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
That's exactly right. Rorschach. He was, yeah, I was trying to think. He was also in something else and I can't remember what, but
He was
it
also
doesn't
poor
matter.
man's Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. That's right. So even his backstory is kind of bullshit, I think. So he is this curmudgeonly, Scrooge-ish, horrible asshole throughout the whole thing. And then in the very last episode of the season, we find out why. And it's because his whole family was killed in a freak skiing accident. But like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, a lot of people have had bad shit happen and they don't become horrendous assholes.
I mean, I'm going to say that that's kind of a theme with a lot of the characters on this show, including the main characters. They're
Yeah,
all kind
Jesse.
of assholes. Like they're all like they all start at like some level of asshole and work their way up to like major asshole to a point where in season 2, I'm going to tell you like one of the best characters in terms of not being a total asshole is fucking Adolf Hitler. And if that's the case, like if I'm sitting there thinking like, oh man, of all the characters on the show, this guy is the least asshole of them all. That's something, all right? That's saying something.
It's a really good fucking point.
Yeah.
I mean, except until, well, until they break out of hell.
Well, all right. So I,
Because
I
they
haven't
do.
seen. Okay, I know that they broke out. I want to say at least in the season finale of season 2. I don't know what happens after that.
Oh,
Um,
I'm so sorry.
No,
Okay,
I
that
mean you
must
didn't
have.
spoil anything for me. I'm sure. I mean, Adolf Hitler's not a good guy, so I can't imagine
He's
he's
not.
gonna do good things when he gets out. But like, yeah,
That's a yeah, I can confirm.
sure. No, and see, this is the thing. Like, I remember back in the day, like when this show was new, I definitely watched season one and I watched some of season two, but I don't believe I continued all the way through. I did not see three or four. So like, and when we were rewatching this, I was getting the why. Like as hard as it was probably in that time, at least in that time when I was watching it week to week, you're like, all right, I got an hour, let's do this. Now, like trying to binge it, I fought through the first half of that season. Like I almost texted you to tell you like this episode was going to be the first one where I come on the show and be like, yeah, this was so bad I didn't even finish it. Like, but then it started getting better. And I think the problem was the first half of that first season is just so aimless. Like, I guess they're
Mhm.
setting stuff up and eventually it will pay off. But at the time, I'm like,
Yes.
okay, episode one ends, and we're any pilot has to end in some way to get you like, oh yeah, okay, I want to keep watching. And of course, like, and I think I said this, a number of times on other shows. When we start to go back for flashbacks, I'm like, all right, this better be worth it. Like I think it was the Reservation Dogs when we talked about this. I'm like, this had better be worth my time. And so the second episode begins 1881, and I'm like,
Yes.
why? Like this
I
better
know.
fucking matter. Like, and granted, eventually, yes, it matters, but does it matter quickly enough for me to care who this like random cowboy is that's like killing people? No. And so like there's
I
a
think
lot of that. There's points where they flash back to Preacher's childhood, and yeah, it's fine when it's just like a random scene, but when we have like a whole episode where it's like, all right, here's how Preacher and Tulip met. I'm like, I don't care. You can do this in like 10 seconds of exposition. So, yeah,
that is correct. And I think that is one of the major differences between the format. A comic book, you can afford to spend maybe a couple pages on a very quick backstory, right? Like you can tightly write that versus on the show, you're investing so much in the set and the wardrobe and like hiring an actor. You can't afford for it to be like 3 seconds or two, whatever it is,
I was
two
actually
minutes.
going to say it's kind of the opposite. Like in a comic book, you really can't afford to like send people off on some random rabbit hole tangent that they don't get because like you're relying on people to come back and buy your book once a month. Like it's not like
Oh.
on the TV show I can just tune in and I no matter how you watch it, I'm not going to say for free, but like presumably when you're watching something like this, it's included in
Yeah.
whatever you're watching it in. Some people are going to buy the episodes episode to episode, but most people probably don't buy a TV show episode to episode. Like, all right, that was great. Let me spend $4 on the next one. Let me spend $4 on the next one. That's
Right.
what you do in comic books. And so, right from the beginning, they tell you that this cowboy guy is the saint of sinners from hell. And
Killers, the saint of
yes,
killers.
sorry, what did I say? Saint of cowboys?
Sinners.
Sinners. Okay, yeah, saint of killers. They tell you right away. So they're trying to tell you, and
Right.
I think that's where they lost me on the TV show. Like they're
Yeah.
throwing all this setup at me, and yeah, it's gonna pay off later. But for now, I'm like, oh, I don't know.
I agree. They should have told us from the jump who
Yeah,
the saint of killers was, like what his name was, because
yeah,
that would have gone a long way toward us understanding what he was doing.
yeah. And I guess this goes back. We should talk about this more in general. I don't know if during this episode or in general, but when you have a show that's structured like a movie, because I think so many shows these days are just like, hey, let's make an 8 to 10 hour movie, cut it up
Right.
into 8 episodes, and you can binge it. Which, by the way, I totally don't get. Like, why movies are not more popular now? Because it's a 2 hour format of that. But
Yeah.
when you do that, your first act is generally the one that you're kind of trusting audiences to get through. It's like, listen, we're going to
Mm-hmm.
spend the first act setting everything up. When
Right.
your first act is like 4 hours long, oof,
It's too much.
yeah,
Yeah, it's too much. I agree. Okay, before we move on, let's since you talked about Hitler, let's talk about
sure.
Hitler's partner in crime in season 2, who we meet. as part of this very long setup of season one,
Yeah.
and that is Eugene Root,
Yeah.
better known as Arseface in the
In the
comic.
comic, which
Yeah,
which leads
nobody.
me. Did they say arse face in the show? Because I feel like that's not the sort of thing people would call him in Texas. It would
No,
be
the
ass face at least.
closest
Yes.
it would be Assface, but the
Yeah.
closest we got was Cassidy giggling to himself, saying, "Kid's got a face like an arse." Yeah,
Yeah.
but you're right.
Cassidy would make sense. Sure.
Yeah, but nobody called him Assface or Arseface.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Anyway.
Eugene Root is a kid who is really kind of annoying. Like, he tried to kill himself after his friend shot herself with a shotgun,
Yeah.
and neither of them died. She's in a coma in her
Right.
room at home, and he disfigured his face to the point where it looks like his mouth is an asshole. Like, it's
Yeah.
just a puckered, exactly what you think an asshole looks like. And he's Preacher's shadow. Like, he's always hanging around asking dumb questions, and Preacher's annoyed with him all the time, right?
Yeah. So I felt really bad for Eugene because in the first season you get the impression that he got rejected by Tracy, that's the girl, shot her and then shot himself, which is not what winds up
No,
happening in season two. And I don't know if that was a retcon, if it was just like a change in direction, or if that was the plan all along. But like in season two, we see she goes to kill herself because she had
he
been
tries to.
rejected by somebody else. He tries to grab the shotgun, and she, I guess, like instead of just like objectively shooting herself in the face, it kind of pulls up and just
Like the
kind of
top of her
nicks
head,
off like part of her brain, a significant
like the
part of her
top
brain.
half.
And
I
then
think,
he turns it on himself, feeling
right.
guilt over what he did, but I don't think he really did anything wrong.
No, he didn't. But the thing is, he is allowing people to believe
Yeah,
that he's the bad guy in the situation, still
yeah,
protecting Tracy, who was kind of a fucking asshole to him.
yeah. Did you
Like,
ever
she's
see
awful.
the movie Dogma?
Yes. Oh my God, years ago.
Yeah, so the way that they described hell in that movie was that hell started out as just this like place where people went and you just kind of like sat around or whatever. But human beings enter and feel this guilt and this need to be punished. And so that's when hell develops into what you think of as hell. And I felt that for this character, like he feels like he needs to be punished. And so he allows himself to take on that role. And, like there's a point where they're in hell and he's like, I probably belong here and all that. And yeah,
But he doesn't. In
he
fact,
doesn't.
that becomes a little bit of an arc in season two when he's in hell, and it's very clear that he is nothing like some of the people who are in hell.
It was funny watching him get like so that there's a point where I don't know, she kind of looked like Zelda Rubinstein, the warden.
Mm-hmm.
She comes up to him and she's like, listen, you're in hell, act accordingly, like you need to be
Yes.
more of an asshole. And so like he you see him getting like prison yoked, I'm gonna call it hell yoked, and like he's got like Tracy tattooed on his back. It was hilarious. It was hilarious watching this sweet kid go to that just because he felt like he needed to like fit in hell.
Exactly. It was hilarious. And the other characters in Hell with him were also hilarious. The Long Island guy with the pastel polo popped collar under the prison jumpsuit, act like with the perfect hair, like busting on people and literally punching. Oh my God, that was so funny. Hitler will never not be funny. There was who's the woman? I don't know her name, but she killed her children, and she was
Yeah,
dressed as a housewife with pearls and like a little apron over her cute dress, and oh my gosh.
I don't remember the explanation that she gave, but it was absolutely like she deserved to be in hell. Like it was, yeah, I think it
100%.
starts out because they don't know who doesn't belong in hell. One of them does not,
Right.
and don't shuffle cards. Like that's gonna come
Sorry.
out on the. This is something that Kate
I'm gonna
does
put them
as like
away.
a, yeah. So anyway, that everybody is being interviewed in hell because they know that one of them doesn't belong there because somebody
Yeah.
didn't die and go to hell. Like Eugene
Yeah.
is just told. I don't think you explained this in the beginning.
You're right.
Genesis allows Jesse to just say something and make people obey his will. And there's
That's
nothing
right.
about telling somebody to go to hell that should just make that happen, but it
No,
does. Like he, out of frustration, tells Eugene, like, go to hell. And he
go to
does. He
hell.
just immediately like is transported to hell, which apparently is a
Appears.
problem. Like I guess hell has like they never really explain why. They have like financial problems, like,
No,
and I'm
they're
like, where are you
overcrowded.
getting your funding, hell? Like, you know.
No, they're overcrowded. That's the problem. They're
But they said they
overcrowded.
have like financial problems where like they can't afford all of the different, like things. They're like, funding
Really?
cutbacks. Yeah, yeah. And I'm just like,
I
why do you need
hate
money,
this.
hell? Like, where are you buying this stuff? But on
Yeah.
the other hand, I guess maybe in a future, I mean, you probably remember the whole show. I don't remember anything beyond what I saw in season two. Like they make it seem like hell is a physical location. Like, because I
Hmm.
was really surprised when Eugene got there that he still had the wound, like the ass face. He should have,
Yeah.
like, his soul should have gone there and been like what he projects his
Right.
soul to be, unless of course you are projecting your soul that way because you want to be punished. Whatever. That's a whole nother
Yeah.
discussion. But it was like a physical place because now I want to know if he still has the tattoo because he was able to climb his way out. So if it's a
Yeah.
physical place, then yes, maybe somebody in the real world is buying up all these projectors and like random things to send down to hell and just shipping it
Okay.
down there like it's any other business.
Wait, though, stop because the projectors, we should talk about
Yeah,
the what hell is.
yeah,
Because, philosophers have been arguing for eons about
sure.
what is hell, and I think Sartre is my favorite explanation. Hell is other people. It's so funny. But in this version of hell, you're put into a cell and there's where a light bulb should be, there's a projector on the screen above and it just goes off all the time and you are suddenly transported into watching the worst day of your life over and over and over again. And for Eugene, it's the day that Tracy tried to kill herself and that he became Assface. And
Which I totally kind of rebelled against because when you see it, I'm sitting there thinking like Eugene should have had the realization at some point, like watching it over and over again, like, oh, this wasn't really my fault. And he does eventually, like with
yeah,
Hitler, of all people, again, Hitler there, like trying to,
pushing him along.
yeah, pushing him along to try to have this arc of self redemption and everything. But like, yeah, I did love that they always refer to it as your hell. They don't say like go back to your
Yeah,
cell or go back to hell. It's your
back to your
hell.
hell.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, which was interesting. I mean, I thought it was kind of I don't know. It's kind of messed up that like Hitler's hell, the thing that he's like the most anxious
So
about in the movie,
poignant.
it's just that
Oh, it's
like there
so
was his artwork got
rejected.
rejected by the art guy, and I'm like, so really that's the thing that you're like most embarrassed about,
Oh,
not like
no.
the 10 million lives that or whatever it was that you're
No,
responsible
wait,
for.
that wasn't he actually okay, so let me back up. So he shows Eugene his hell. And at the start of it, he's meeting this girl and she's really pretty and they're talking and then his art is rejected by the guy sitting in the corner. And then the communists burst in. Do you remember the communists and they have
Yeah,
guns and they're like yelling in this restaurant and they're like, "You people should understand, blah blah blah, change is coming, whatever." And somebody like trips, one of the communists trips and the gun like drops to the ground and slides to Hitler's feet. And he picks it up and he has the ability to stop this really horrible scene that's unfolding in front of all of these guests who are scared. And instead, he's holding the gun like this and he walks up and he walks up and he gets to the guy and the guy like turns on him menacingly and Hitler goes, I think you dropped this.
yeah.
Go. And he gets back to the table and the girl is just disgusted and she like walks out and later when the scene wraps Hitler says to Eugene, that was the last day that I was good.
Yeah.
And I remember just being like, oh God, all of these little moments, these decisions that are both in your control and out of your control. One person, one decision can turn you into Adolf Hitler versus I don't know, a little kindness in the world can make you decide not to be a heinous human being.
Sure.
Anyway,
Yeah.
that was a lot. That was a lot. Um,
So let's go through at least the main characters.
Yeah,
Jesse. So when we talked about Scott Pilgrim, we were talking about the idea of a main character, a hero who kind of sucks. And I feel
anti-hero.
like Jesse is that guy. He was a little bit
Oh
more of an
yeah.
asshole in the comic book, but in the show, I mean, he's not like 100% dick, but he's certainly kind of an asshole.
95%.
95% dick, sure. Like,
Yeah.
and I don't need to feel like a character is likable in order to, get into a show, but at the same time, I mean, when you couple that with like the aimless direction of that first half of the first season,
Yeah.
I was just having a very hard time. Like, I think the well, I'll let you talk about Jesse for a second before I get into like the one bright spot of this show for me.
I can't wait to hear what that one bright spot is. For
Sure.
me, that one bright spot is Cassidy. Cassidy, because you're
Okay.
right, it's hard to root for somebody who I don't understand their motivation for being such an asshole.
Yeah.
Like at one point, he and Cassidy get into a fight, and Cassidy is a vampire. He cannot
Right.
be in sunlight. But Jesse walks out into the yard, the dirt yard, and Cassidy feels so strongly about what they're talking about that he follows him, and Jesse just lets him burn. And for several scenes, the show lets us think that Jesse let Cassidy die. And I remember just being like, fuck Jesse, self-righteous bastard. Like you think you've got the market on goodness corner? Are you serious? What
Yeah.
the no, no, no. Anyway, that's
I
Jesse's
think
threat.
when South Park first came out, part of the appeal was seeing kind of like R-rated comedy and language coming out of animated kids. Like that was something we hadn't seen before. It was something that, there was a certain shock value to it. And I think
Right,
part of the pitch here is we've got an asshole preacher. And I'm like,
right.
listen, that's maybe at the time, I don't know, but right now that's nothing new to me. Like,
No.
with everything that's gone on with the Catholic Church over the years
Yeah.
and preachers in general, like I'm thinking
Yes.
of TV televangelists and specifically, like it's nothing new to me to see like a preacher, that's kind of an asshole. So
I agree. And I think it's a fun thing to try to sell to a studio.
yeah,
Like, okay, I'm gonna pitch you this show. There's this preacher, but he's an asshole, and there's a vampire, and like it's a it's something. I get that.
yeah.
So what was the bright spot for you?
Ruth Nega, that girl's
Oh, I
adorable, and
love
like
her.
she has
I could watch her
perfect
read the
comedic
phone book.
timing. Yeah, like
Yep.
I don't know what she's been up to since this show ended, but I haven't specifically seen her in anything. But she
She
just
was
had
just,
such perfect comedic timing, and she was
I
just
know.
adorable. Like
Yeah.
season two, the line that I laughed about, like way more than I think they intended, was when you've got that girl in the cage and the other preacher is explaining why, and Tulip is just like, "Am I the only one that thinks this like psychotic?" It's just the way that she delivered that. I laughed for so long. So
I
she was,
completely
and that's
forgot about
not to
that.
say that Tulip is not an asshole,
Right, she
because
is.
she also kind of is. Maybe not even kind of. She also is.
Yeah,
But just like
but
Ruth
less.
Negga in general was a high point of the show for me.
I could watch her read the phone book. I
Yeah,
would pay money just to sit and watch her on stage read the phone book. She is so easy to watch and so beautiful, and she makes what she does look effortless, the acting.
yeah.
She just played Jake Gyllenhaal's wife in Presumed Innocent, and that
Okay.
is the only way that I was able to get through that show because she was so easy to watch.
When you say just, is that like a 2024 show or?
Yes, it's on
Okay.
Apple right now.
Well, I'm
Yes.
glad that she's still out there doing stuff because I hadn't. She kind of fell off the face of the earth to me after this show.
Oh,
So yeah.
I love her. I think she was also just in that oh my God, Daniel Levy show. No, it was a movie on Hulu about getting over a relationship. I think she was also just she played one of his friends, and she's just exquisite. I love her so much.
Cool.
Yeah, I forget
So
where we were talking about.
season one ends and we go into season two, which I did find better. And I think the reason I found it better was that right from the start, we had a defined goal. You know, they're out
Yep,
looking for God. And I told you I loved the setup for that. Like the setup in the last episode of season one is look, God's missing. If he needs our help, we're gonna help him. And if he doesn't, we're gonna kick his ass. And I was like, that's a great way to set that up. You've got
yep,
them looking for God, you've got the Saint of Killers, you know, trying to hunt them down. So we have a problem, you know, that they're out there, or a goal, and you have a problem. And
yeah,
that's all I wanted out of season one was like
yeah,
some kind of direction. Um, and you
yeah,
know, they kind of, first of all those people we didn't really care about in the first season, they killed them all. It's sort of like a Lois and Clark deal. I guess like everybody got fired. There's a I want to talk about this. So at the end of season one, they call God on the phone. Like they're able to actually call God in a church. And they make it out like this big thing, like it's promoted. Like, listen, we're gonna call God on Sunday. You should all be there. And they all
yep.
believe it. You know, they're like, okay, yeah, we're gonna meet God on Sunday. So they all go
Yokels
and they do it. They call heaven, and somebody who appears to be God, who is impersonating him, answers the phone.
answers the
Yeah,
phone.
and answers some of their biggest questions, and you know, the questions that you would imagine people would ask, like why do bad things happen to good people, kind of a deal.
Yeah,
I was surprised what's the meaning of life didn't come up, but hey, this is a room full of Texans. You know, who knows what they're gonna ask, you know. Um, but afterwards, when they find out that the guy that picked up the phone was just an impersonator, um, they all lose their faith. And I think that the town is punished for that. And that, you know, one of the guys who I guess controls like the methane plant or whatever, he's, you know, cheating on his wife now. He has sex with somebody, he
oh,
has a heart attack, and the methane gets released into the whole town and it blows up. And I was
I
like,
did not. I'm sorry, keep going. You're blowing my mind right now.
I I didn't get why that instance, like they objectively called heaven, and they all believed that they called heaven, and they were like, yes, there is a God. The guy you've been praying to, he existed. He exists technically, but we just don't know where he is right now, which by the
He
way
left.
is no different from the last 2000 years. We don't know where he is.
That's right.
Why would
I
that
did
make everybody
not.
go, whoa, God, ugh, we're done with that now, you know?
So I didn't have a problem with that. That because well, I'm an atheist, and so it was weird to watch people so fervently believe in anything like that. I just don't I find that to be unsettling no matter what God you're praying to. I find that to be a little weird is not the right word, but just zealotry in anyone is unnerving to me. But I did not think of it as punishment. I just thought of it as a consequence. Like they've lost their faith. This man has decided he's going to do what he's going to do. And he has a heart attack, and the methane gets released into the town, and the whole town blows up. And the whole town is just full of cow shit, right?
Yeah, I guess there were pipes that were going up to basically everywhere in the town delivering methane gas. I don't know why they needed methane gas delivered. I mean, I guess it's like anything, like that's probably how they got their power. I don't know. But there's some kind of
No, the
explosion at the plant, or I don't know.
so the methane gas was coming from the cow shit, and when the cow shit got the when the methane gas got to be too strong for it being underground, the pipes would release it into the air, and
Okay.
then the pressure would come down underground. Like it was a
Mm,
very scientific way of protecting the town. But the guy wasn't there
irony.
to I know irony. Yeah. I really wasn't thinking of it as punishment,
I mean,
but
maybe
that's
it's
an
not because there
interesting
is no God to give them divine
right.
punishment. So I don't know, but yeah.
That's right.
But in my immediate watching, that was the first thing I thought. Like the entire town rejected God, and good, now you're done. Like that's how God has worked. Not necessarily the Judeo-Christian God, at least the New
Pretty
Testament God,
vindictive.
but like Old Testament God would totally have blown up a town for rejecting him.
Yeah, that's pretty
And
vindictive.
like let's say like Zeus saw them, they would have totally blown up a town for
100%.
rejecting. Yeah, so that was my first
Um,
knee jerk reaction. But
I didn't think about that, but I can we sidebar for a second and talk about
sure.
the two angels whose job it was to
Yeah.
find Genesis,
Yeah.
because so Genesis enters Jesse's body and gives him this power that he is able to command anyone to do anything, and they have to do it. They have to. And the two angels that Genesis escaped from, I can't think of their names. Fior is one, and
I keep thinking of Ganesh, which is
I know.
the name
Yeah,
he takes for show business, but no, I don't remember
that's
their name.
right.
It started with a
Yeah, I
D,
don't
I want to
either.
say.
Yeah. Anyway, they are staying at a motel in Anvil trying to get Genesis back. They've tracked him down to Jesse and they keep trying. And oh my gosh, I can't remember now exactly how it worked. They needed to find the Saint of Killers. They needed to go to hell to give him the contract on Jesse's life. And the location, the oh my God, what is it called? The little bus that picks them up on the way to get to the. Did you recognize that scene?
No.
It looked almost exactly like in Breaking Bad, where
Uh,
Walter got picked up to be taken to safety.
these would have come out around the same time, right? I don't know if it was the exact same time, but definitely
I
in the
think it
same
was a
era. Yeah.
nod. It
Okay.
was so funny. I was like, oh my God, did they borrow the whole? Is it the same street? It looked like the same roadway.
Definitely
Anyway,
look into that.
I
Yeah.
thought that was so fun.
Mm.
Yeah. Anyway, that was my sidebar.
So okay, so to go back, like
Yeah.
why okay, if you knew for a fact that there was a God and that God did all these things that we read about in the Bible, if that was factual information, but hey, he went missing, why would that suddenly make like an entire town be like, "Oh, yeah, we're done
I
with God."
agree. No,
Yeah.
I agree with you. Like, he's still, theoretically, if you have somehow proof that he exists, he still exists. He's
Yeah.
just not where we think he is.
And I mean, it's not like we ever really knew where God was in the
Also,
first place. Yeah,
it's not like it's not like when he was in heaven, he was preventing bad things from happening.
right. And so when the woman, I don't remember her name because I don't care. When she sits down with her kids and she's like, "Listen,
Oh
we're
my
done with God, but we
goodness.
never needed him in the first place." I was like, "What? Like, why is this happening?" You know?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So season two, I
Yeah.
guess um, Dennis. Dennis is like
Oh.
Cassidy's kid, who I guess is like, maybe like an octogenarian or something.
Yeah, I think he's in
And
his 70s or 80s.
yeah, it's very late in the season that we're actually told that it's his child. Like you think they're just old
Mm-hmm.
buddies and they go to crash at this guy Dennis's house in New Orleans. Um and Dennis becomes increasingly a problem throughout the season. Like, he's dying, he wants to be turned into a vampire. Cassidy eventually gives in. Like if that wasn't a problem enough that he was dying and all that, Cassidy eventually gives in, turns him into a vampire. And then he becomes even more of a problem. Like, he just decides to go nuts, like biting people, and in a world where their vampires don't necessarily need to do that. Like, like you said, Cassidy was able to kind of get along on a cow. There have been like cats and dogs here and there that he's eaten.
And like they every once in a while they go to a hospital and they
Yeah,
rob the hospital of the little blood bags. So there is absolutely no reason. But
they make
the
it seem
the
like he
problem,
only really needs to drink blood if he needs to heal himself from something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And Cassidy has been a vampire for like 100 years. Dennis just became a vampire, and he, like any child, is going to play and enjoy himself with this new power. And Cassidy is horrified
yeah.
and keeps trying to say, listen, son, moderation. We don't want to like attract attention. This is, he keeps trying so hard.
Does he though? I feel like, he makes it clear, like, this isn't cool. But, like,
Right.
he doesn't really, like, sit him down and say, like, listen, we shouldn't really be doing this. At one time, he does say, like, you have these urges, you should never, ever, 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 ever act on them. Um, which is not the same thing as, like, listen, if you're in a jam and, like, you need healing a little bit,
Yeah.
but not, like,
Hmm.
Eventually, Cassidy just kills him, which was a really sad scene because he
It
pushes him out a
was.
window into the sunlight. The same sunlight that Cassidy was sitting in before, where there was an awning, but now it kills him. I don't know, but
I think it's the angle of the sun.
sure. Different time of day, maybe. I don't know.
Who
um
knows?
that was a sad arc for the season.
Yeah, it was. It was too bad. Poor
Yeah.
Dennis.
And you had the villains of the season shift to the Grail Company,
Hmm.
um, which is we come to learn is defending the last. I spoke about Dogma before, so I'm going to call it what they called it, the last Scion, which is the last descendant of Jesus Christ, which
Yeah.
was bananas. I mean, so
Hmm.
when you're first introduced to the guy, he looks identical to Jesus. Like he's standing, you see his silhouette, and Jesse
I think
gets
it's the
down
same
on his
actor.
knees as what?
Jesus.
Oh, right, because they show you the flashback, which
Yeah.
again we did not need, but whatever.
The
um,
flashback was Jesus
yeah,
having sexy times with somebody. I don't even know
somebody
who.
who knows. I don't. They don't
Yeah.
give a name, but
They
it,
don't give
it
a
didn't
name.
matter. We didn't need it at all. That never came into
No.
play later. Um,
Nope.
so then what was the guy's name? Humperdew. That was what they named the last
Humperdew.
descendant of Jesus Christ. Humperdew pees on
Jesse.
Jesse because he's he has mental
He's developmentally disabled. There has been
yes.
so much inbreeding.
And this was what I wanted to ask you. Why? You know, it's not like a royal family where you want to keep the genes royal and you've got like cousin A and cousin B. If I am to believe that there is one descendant and they just keep protecting this one dude, who did they inbreed him with? Because there's nobody else. Like there's no sister. It's like, why did you not just grab
Well,
anyone that would be
there's
like
no
volunteering to have the baby of the last like Messiah?
there's no sister in this generation. But
Okay.
if Jesus's son had grown up and had two children, a boy and a girl, would you really be that surprised if the church was like, well, in order to keep this completely pure, it's not what we prefer, but what's going to have to happen?
Yeah,
I
I don't
wouldn't put it
think that
past
that
them.
in practicality, I don't think that's how it should have worked at all. Like they should have just
No,
okay, you had people that were willing to give their lives for this organization. Like everybody
right.
was so why would you not have somebody who's like absolutely I volunteer as tribute to be like the one who has the next baby and then let's be honest, they're going to kill her. So then like I will have the baby and then you kill me and I'm totally fine with that. Like I don't know
Dude,
why that didn't happen.
in a world that is controlled by men who believe that women are inherently impure, why would they if they have the option of Jesus's daughter? I'm just
I,
saying, I
I mean,
can see
the,
how
the
they could
clear
get
answer
there.
is Humperdew is the reason why. But no,
I'm
I
just
just
saying, I could see how they could get there.
zero part of me
It's
bought into that because, like,
okay.
there's another scene where the guy who's in charge, and I can't remember his name either, the Cyclops guy, um,
Stark or Star,
Stark,
Hair Star,
Hair Star, right?
Star. Yeah, Hair Star.
He just casually orders his subordinates to get him some prostitutes, which in a very hilarious way doesn't really work out. But it's the kind of culture where they're comfortable just being like, oh, yeah, we'll get some prostitutes. So if you can just do that, of course they would have been like, oh, yeah, get us a prostitute that's willing to have a kid for the Messiah or whatever. I don't know. The whole thing was just weird.
Yeah, well, the Grail organization is just weird to
Yeah.
think. I mean, in season one, it was preposterous that they could like call God on a special phone that
Yeah.
the angels brought with them. That's ridiculous. But
Sure.
in season two, they take it one step further and they're like, well, there is a direct link between heaven
Yeah.
and this human, earthly, corporate organization that has been watching over the Jesus royal family for centuries. I mean, it is the Pope is involved. Like there are all of these
Yeah. To be honest
complicit.
with you, I I could totally buy that. Like if there is some last descent of Jesus, I'm
Sure.
I'm, I'm not going to say that there would be like a link between heaven and that, but I could totally buy into the idea that there would be some like elite group that is like
Hmm.
like any Indiana Jones movie. There's like some
Right.
elite group that's like guarding the important religious artifact. I can
Yes.
totally believe that there's some elite group protecting this guy. Um, now they got into like all this stuff of like selling souls and all that, and like that
Yeah.
round up having
Stupid.
like no connection to it at all. I don't
No,
get.
it
But
was ridiculous.
as a matter of fact, now that I'm talking, like speaking out loud about all this, there was no need for the Messiah at all. Like in this story arc, at least. I mean, I don't know. Maybe in future seasons it'll come into play, but nothing
The
happens as a
whole
result of they're just like, oh, you know what? Switching gears, you're the chosen one now.
the the book Preacher is meant to be subversive. And so having a Messiah who is developmentally disabled to the point where all he can do is pee on other people, there is no conversation to be had. There is no intellect. There is nothing. He is an at-risk person if he were not part of this organization. And I think that was the whole point of Humperdoo, to be subversive.
See, I thought the whole point of Humperdoo was that he's the one that ultimately gives them the final clue of where God really was, because he's drawing these same
Right.
drawings of the dog over and over
Of the
again.
dog.
Which, by the way, going back to when we first meet like dog, that was probably my favorite scene in the whole season.
It was
Was when
amazing.
um they're going around New Orleans trying to find God because they figure somebody gives them the tip that God was really into jazz, and they're like, all right, if you're
Yeah.
gonna like jazz, that's gonna be the place
Going
to
to New
go.
Orleans.
So
Yep.
they're like telling people, we want to see God, and everybody keeps going, all three of you, yeah. And it's like they go to the next place like they want to see God. All three of them? Yeah.
All three
So
of you?
finally they get to the last curtain and it's like they want to see God. And Cassidy breaks in and goes, all three of us. And I don't know why I found that as funny as it was, but I
So
just loved
funny.
that line. So then they open up the curtain, and instead of finding actual God, they find basically like a BDSM dungeon where there's
Yeah. They
somebody with
call
a
him Man
guy in,
Dog
a dog costume on a leash, and they're like,
with
for
a
twelve
mask.
thousand dollars you can fuck him in the A. For like, I don't know why I just censored myself on A when I said fuck somebody. For $5,000 you can watch while somebody else does it. All that.
Like there's
Um,
this price menu.
yeah,
It's bananas.
yeah, and then Jesse cuts in and he's like, "Wait a minute, no, no, no. I'm
We're not
actually
here for
looking for
this.
God, not this. I don't know what this is, but this is not what I'm looking for." And then it turns out later this was exactly what he was looking for, because that was
This was
God.
God.
That
God
was
was in
God
that mask.
offering $12,000 to sodomize him. Um,
Again, very subversive.
yeah,
Very much like a big middle finger to organized religion, I
which
think.
really should kind of carry me into the end of season two, which is my big criticism of all of this was that it was so anticlimactic. Like, all right, we find God, but we really found him all along. But I don't know, he was just like some
Big
pervert
deal.
guy. And then what's her name? Tulip gets shot, and there's no
Yeah.
part of me that thinks she's really gonna die.
No.
Um, but
But it gets us to where they need to go next.
okay,
Yeah.
which is fair, which is fair. But because we're at like the hour 30 mark at this point, I'm gonna
Are we
say
really?
something like
Oh,
that,
shit.
right?
I
I'm
don't
gonna
remember.
say I would not recommend Preacher seasons one and two. Like if if you're new to this, and you haven't seen them, I would say skip it. There were some great things. Like I had some laughs. There were some cool episodes, and yes, I binged through season two pretty quickly. But at the end of the day, did I find it worth it? Probably not. I mean, I probably will continue and go on and watch three and four, just because what else have I got to watch at this point? Like I'm already caught up on the next show's worth of stuff. So I
Oh,
don't. But really,
it hurts my
eh,
heart. Yeah. I remember loving it the first time that I watched it, but
yeah.
the
I
first time
remember
that I
you
watched
loving it. I
it,
remember you being really excited about us watching it. And that's why
yeah.
when I was sitting there on my couch going like, I don't know if I can do this anymore. I thought it was going to make for a great show, because I was going to walk in here and be like, yo, so this is hot garbage, and you were going to defend it, but that's not what wound up happening. So here we are.
No, there are definitely parts of it that are hot garbage, and season one really was bumpy and slow at the beginning. Um, but and season three is there are going to be some parts I think that are slow as well. I can't remember exactly, but season four, when it all culminates, it it's I remember being really wowed by it, and I'm
Without giving it
hoping that
away,
I
is it a show with a deliberate ending? Like, did this just get like cut off out
yes.
of nowhere? Okay, that's cool.
No, they write it is a perfect like beginning to end story.
Okay,
And I want to say that it stays pretty close to the book, but I read the book so many years ago.
yeah.
I don't know.
There's something like 6 volumes of it, so the 6 volumes are all kind of contained within those 4 seasons. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, and there
If
are
you're interested in
some
reading the book, you can actually on Amazon Prime. If you're a Prime member, you
really?
can read the Kindle version for free. That's how I did it.
Oh, stop it. Really?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
it's like $10 a volume, or if you're a Prime member, you can quote borrow it for free. So that's what I did with volume one. I haven't finished it yet, but presumably if I enjoy, the thing, I'll go on and read the rest. But
Thank you.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. I'm gonna not go as far as you and say I don't recommend it. It's definitely it's a fun show if you're looking for like just some throwaway time and to be entertained. It's not intellectually difficult. It's not
For sure. I mean, I guess what I would say is if you're looking for a show that you want to put on while you're dicking around on your phone, this is a good one
that's
because
exactly
I did a
right.
lot of that in that first half of the first season.
I did a
And at
lot of
no
dicking
point,
around.
maybe I missed like a couple things here and there, but at no point did I feel like, oh, I'm lost. What's going on here? And then when things
Yeah,
were good, you put your phone down and, you get more engaged with it, and that's
100%.
fine. But
So we've never used a star method to rate things, but if we were, I would give this like 2.5 out of 5. Like
yeah,
it's
I was just thinking like
solid.
4 or 5 out of 10. So like 2 out of 5 would be fine.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's not high art,
no,
but it's pretty entertaining. And the
sure.
characters are all very easy to watch, very easy to look at.
Okay, from that perspective, I was about to say like we just railed on every single character on the show,
No,
but yeah,
easy to look, easy on
easy
the
to look at
eyes.
is
Ruth
fine. Although
Nega
I've
is
never really liked
beautiful.
Dominic. Was it Dominic Cooper is
No,
his name? I've never really loved
he's
like
not my
his
favorite.
look. But Cassidy and Tulip are certainly very good looking.
Cassidy is adorable and Tulip is adorable. I could watch them, oh my God, all the live long day. In fact, we didn't say this, but shout out to Tulip. She is the only reason that Cassidy didn't die. After Jesse left him burning in the sun,
Yeah,
Ruth Nega, Tulip rescued him.
sure.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. All right. So what's
Anyway,
up next?
up next is the Umbrella Academy, which dropped its last season this, I don't know, what fall, summer, this late
Recently.
summer,
Yeah,
recently,
recently-ish. Um,
recently-ish.
So we're going to be focusing our conversation on the last season. Obviously, we'll need to kind of like gloss over some stuff that happened in the previous seasons. But the
Yeah,
Umbrella Academy is absolutely one of those shows that, like, if it were not for the recap in the beginning of this season, I wouldn't remember a damn thing that happened beforehand. It
nor
was a
do I
terrible
think.
comic. It was fine as a show, but nothing super memorable.
No.
But
Well,
yeah,
I don't know. We'll
I
have
think
to.
we'll discuss it when we get to the Umbrella Academy
Yes.
show. So next,
Yes.
see you next time.
See you next time.